I think medical marijuana as it exists today will be recalibrated and redefined. It will go down a different path. Because medical marijuana today, while it does have a tremendous benefit for those who are, like for cancer patients and so forth, the research will enable more targeted, precise medications to become available. So medical marijuana will go down one path, and then recreational and the way the medical marijuana is defined today will kind of merge into one substantially larger market.
Hey, it's Keith Fiveson with the Mindfulness Experience podcast. We're here live at the CWCB Expo, and we're exploring the intersection of mindfulness, mental health, and the latest trends in the cannabis area, and specifically how it can go ahead and impact your life. We have an incredible guest with us today, someone who has a wealth of experience in the finance area, accounting, and emerging industries. Matt Karnes is the founder of GreenWave Advisors LLC and has over 25 years of diverse finance and accounting experience. Before founding GreenWave, Matt held positions in equity research and finance at firms like First Union Securities, S.G. Cohen, and Bear Stearns & Company. But what makes Matt even more special is that Matt and I share an alma mater. We both graduated from Fordham University. And I just want to welcome Matt to the show. Matt, thank you so much for being here on the Mindfulness Experience podcast at the CWCB Expo.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's good to know that I'm among the ranks of a Fordham alum.
Well, Matt, it's a great stool because it in my experience, that really gave me a discerning quality, understanding the Jesuit education and really questioning reality in a lot of cases. And I know you get that, so it's fantastic to connect with you as a Fordham alumni. And I'd like to dive into some questions, really to explore some of the fascinating areas that you're working with. So you have a broad background in the finance and accounting area with experience in both traditional and emerging areas, emerging technologies as well. Can you share with us what motivated you to found GreenWave Advisors and how your career led you to focus on the cannabis industry?
Sure. And thanks for the question. So going back, I founded GreenWave in 2014, so I've been at it quite a while now. And coming after I left the sell side, I worked at a hedge fund and went to the buy side. And this was around 2011, 2012. The world was kind of turning upside down with the housing crisis. Before you knew it, our fund imploded. And at the same time, my mother was sick with cancer. So after she passed, I was reading about medical marijuana. And I thought, well, maybe this would be an interesting area to explore, being off a chair for a significant amount of time. So I ventured to Boston to what was my first cannabis conference. There was people thought I'd lost my mind. Hey, Matt, you're not working. Your mother just passed away. Why are you, going to a pot conference? But as you said, as you mentioned, I have experience in emerging industries, and it's always attracted me, and I've always found intriguing. And I thought, well, there was enough people at the first cannabis conference that I found interesting to lead me to the next conference, which ultimately led me to Colorado that year, which was then the big conference. There was about 800 people there. To put things in perspective, today, MJ Biz gets about, I think, 40,000 was the last count last year. So I thought that it would be interesting to lend my skill set into this industry because it's a new industry. There are no rules. There's no professionalism. There's none of that. So I rolled up my sleeves and really took a crack at trying to analyze the industry. And here I am 10 years later, still trying to figure it out.
Well, I think everyone's trying to figure it out, but it seems like it's emerging out of the smoke, if you will, getting some clarity, which is really very important. And, I first of all just want to go back for a moment and say I'm sorry about your mom, losing your mom. I'm a two-time cancer survivor myself, and I do appreciate all the stuff that people go through. It's a terrible, terrible, terrible process, and I really do believe that cannabis can help. It can help in a number of ways to ease the pain, to help people feel connected, to help them feel alive, like they're in their body. Let me ask you, given your extensive experience in equity research on the investment strategy side, what do you see as some of the most significant financial changes and opportunities currently facing the cannabis industry?
So the biggest challenge, which has been plaguing the industry for years, since the beginning of when this industry materialized, is Section 280E of the tax code. And what that means for those who are not familiar is cannabis companies, or any Schedule I company for that matter, must report their income. Their income is assessed, the income taxes are assessed on gross profit. So what does that mean? That means that for those companies that have pre-tax income, their effective tax rate could be north of 60%. For those that have pre-tax losses, that effectively means that these companies need to raise capital just to pay their tax liabilities. That's not a sustainable business model. And so now and this has been going on now for 10 years plus for many of these companies. So you could just imagine the dire situation some are in. And now with the rescheduling to Schedule 3 from Schedule 1, which is imminent, that removes the Schedule 3, and as a result there'll be an acceleration in free cash flow profiles, which will benefit not only the operators, but pretty much it's a domino effect that will benefit all the ancillary businesses as well.
So with the move to Schedule 3, 280 is relieved quite a bit. In other words, they don't have to be looking at gross profit, they could be looking at operating costs, expenses, things along that nature, and actually work with the banking system to go ahead and show real profits or actually deposit and invest.
Yeah, so basically it's still unclear about the banking, but we suspect that that's going to come soon thereafter, whether it be FinCEN guidance update or a Garland memo. It's not definitively been identified as something that will be changed within the banking landscape, but it's probably soon to come. But I think what's very important to understand is that the Schedule 3 is a prelude to federal legalization, and what I mean by that is this is really the first stop on the bus. Now the federal regulators will be able to come in and better understand the industry, and they'll formulate standards around testing and packaging and all that. Right now everything's been left to the states to kind of do their own thing, and it's been very, very it's scattered, it's non-consistent, and there are a lot of inherent problems with that type of model. So this enables a more standardized approach, which will take time to develop. And then once we have federal legalization, so we talk about 280E and that cost of prohibition going away, but there are other costs of prohibition that many companies face, such as added compliance costs because you're dealing in all cash, higher costs of capital, insurance costs are higher. The list goes on. And so eventually over time those costs will come down, and cash flow profiles will accelerate even further with margin expansion and all that.
Well, that's very exciting. It's exciting for the industry, and of course it would be great if it was descheduled altogether, but I think moving from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3 is a good move to at least start with. And I think it also shows the medicinal qualities of cannabis and the opportunity for research to go ahead and prove that out. Would you agree with that?
Oh, 100%. And I think that with the research, I think medical marijuana as it exists today will be recalibrated and redefined. It will go down a different path. Because medical marijuana today, while it does have a tremendous benefit for those who are, like for cancer patients and so forth, the research will enable more targeted, precise medications to become available with precise dosage and efficacy. So medical marijuana will go down one path, and then recreational, and the way the medical marijuana is defined today will kind of merge into one substantially larger market.
Isn't that amazing? When we started looking at medical marijuana, the whole concept of medical cannabis I use cannabis because of the endocannabinoid system and a real understanding that there may be a lot of people that have endocannabinoid deficiencies, and that is causing a lot of the, whether or not it's fibromyalgia, whether or not it's Parkinson's, whatever it is. From that viewpoint, there's at least an opportunity to study it and to go ahead and provide the right dosing for the individual, which is huge. Let me ask you, you've been around the game for a while. You've analyzed and authored reports on companies like Google and Sirius XM. How do you approach the analysis of emerging industries like cannabis compared to more established sectors?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, and it's a heck of a lot more challenging because those other sectors that you mentioned, when we, analyze Google and Sirius and all those emerging technologies, they weren't federally illegal, right? It was legal. So there's an inherent challenge in and of itself to analyze and to really understand the cannabis industry, because each state operates in a closed economy and each state just does their own thing. So it becomes increasingly more challenging. And once you think you have one state understood, they change the law or the rules and regulations. The game changes, could change. It has in several instances. When I first started this journey in 2014, when I wrote my first research paper and I analyzed the industry, rolled up my sleeves trying to think, okay, if I was sitting on a chair on Wall Street at Bear Stearns, for example, and the director of research came up to me and said, Matt, go study or go analyze and cover marijuana, what would I do? So I looked at Colorado because that was really the only game in town. And I thought back then, well, gee, let's use that as best practices. Every state's going to do what Colorado's doing. Well, I couldn't have been more wrong. And even where we are today, 10 years later, you would think that some states have learned from the mistakes of others, but no, that's not necessarily the case. So the approach is to look at each state, analyze the state, but then really have a longer term view of what I think the industry will look like upon federal legalization. And that's not really all that easy, because I think it's a pretty wide or foregone conclusion that at some point we're going to have big tobacco, big alcohol. I mean, the industry as we know it today is going to look a lot different.
Yeah, I mean that's a real complex question. I realize that because there is no, it's sort of like trial and error. There is no cookie cutter approach because we haven't done this before, and we're trying to go ahead and create new frontiers for new medicines, and I think people that have been in the industry are threatened. We know that consumption of alcohol is down. We know that the big pharma companies with SSRIs are frightened because they see the MDMA studies or the psilocybin studies and they wonder, oh my goodness, they won't need us anymore. So what do we do? Let me ask you, when you start looking at the regulatory environment for cannabis, as complex and as constantly changing as it is, how does GreenWave Advisors help clients navigate these challenges, and what trends are you seeing in the cannabis legislation that investors should be aware of?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, and really would I try to help, let me back up a second. One of the things I think I could bring to the table, or what I thought at the time when I started GreenWave, is my prior accounting background. I worked for Price Waterhouse and I worked in public accounting. So I'm a real numbers guy. In fact, it's really hard. My fingers still want to touch the calculator. I can't get my hands off a calculator. It's, as you can imagine, early on, there weren't many professionals that came into this industry. Nobody was going to quit their day job to be an accountant who'd leave Procter & Gamble to come to work in a federally illegal industry. So from day one, there's an inherent mess, right? Because there's just lack of experience. And this has clearly come to fruition. What I believe back then is the number of financial restatements. There's been a tremendous number of redos, if you will. And so one thing I think I could help investors better understand is the complexities around the numbers, to kind of look through the smoke, if you will, and get a better understanding of what's real and what's not real. So that's sort of the main differentiated factor I think that GreenWave brings to the table.
I think that's an excellent differentiating factors, because one of the things that we do have right now is a lot of cognitive distortions, black and white thinking, not necessarily really looking at the realities that are there. I mean, one in this industry, one size does not fit all. So, you know, different people like different food, different ethnic backgrounds, different religions, so on and so forth. It's foolish to think that somehow one size fits all. So I think your experience, over 10 years of experience in an industry that is coming from the nascent stage into an emerging market, into a growth market, is absolutely great, and so necessary. And by the way, I was over at Pricewaterhouse as well. I was in the customer experience side of the business. You were on the accountant side. I was on helping organizations to build their customer experience platforms. That's where I was at, and I left PwC in 2016, and you know, that was quite a while ago, but not too long ago. But that was my corporate background. I was all involved with user experience, and along the line I got involved with yoga and meditation and integrative health and wellness, and you know, that's where my background was to go ahead and balance me, and that's where the mindfulness experience grew out of. That background in terms of what is your experience and how mindful are you, and are you present to the now, are you present to what the impact is? And I think you're doing that certainly in terms of your advisory, helping your clients to ask some of those questions in terms of what the impact is. So that sounds great. Let me ask you one last question, and then maybe I might have another. But beyond cannabis, you certainly have a keen interest in emerging technologies in the media and telecom sectors. And I'm wondering how you see the convergence of technology and cannabis evolving in the future, particularly in areas like digital marketing and blockchain.
I think there's tremendous opportunity, and as the regulatory landscape changes and the walls come down, there'll be plenty of opportunity to embrace the technology that's out there, particularly in advertising. You know, there's been a lot of you know, restrictions around that, and I think that's going to be increasingly important. I say that excuse me, because as you probably are well aware, the illicit market has been really, there's a robust illicit market pretty much in every state. It's very profound here in New York City. And I think part of that is because the consumer is not aware of the legal market. They walk into a smoke shop and they don't know the difference. And so I think over time, with the technology in terms of with marketing and advertising and so forth, they'll be able more effectively reach the consumer, and which will have an impact on mitigating the impact of, you know, the illicit market.
You know, I really like that answer, because what it does is, for me, from a user experience viewpoint, it really talks to the ability to go ahead and, whether or not it's blockchain or whether or not it's some other NTF or, you know, NFT rather, but to be able to go ahead and put your bio in place so that you really do understand the right place, the right time. The place may know you, you get a frequent buyer discount, you might be directed to secret parties that people don't know about. And this is some of the advantages of NFTs and blockchain and the capability to do some of that stuff, specifically on the advertising and education area. And you've really pointed that out really well. How do people get a hold of you if they're interested in, you know, exploring some of these areas for their business, if they want to get into the market, if they want to start looking at the market itself? What do they do, and how do they get a hold of you?
Well, thanks for asking. So the best way to reach me is on our website, www.greenwaveadvisors, that's plural.com, all one word. Or alternatively, I could be reached directly via email at M as in Matt, Karnes, Matt Karnes, mkarnes@greenwaveadvisors.com.
Excellent, Matt. So, Matt, I really want to thank you very much for sharing your insights with us today, and it's been enlightening to hear your journey and your innovative work that you're doing over at GreenWave Advisors. For our listeners who want to learn more about Matt's work or get in touch, we'll have links and contact information in the show notes. Remember to stay mindful and stay informed and keep exploring the intersections of finance, technology, and emerging industries. Until the next time, this is Keith Fiveson signing off on the CWCB Expo, and this time looking to talk to you more about the mindfulness experience as we go forward with future podcasts and other guests. Thank you.